Okay, here we go with another installment to add to our notes. Last week we talked a little bit about web accessibility, and I mentioned that we might discuss it a little more in this section, which is still a possibility. And then I moved into the notes on lists, and we learned that there were 3 kinds of lists to organize content on a web page. We have our unordered list, which is the same thing as what we call a bulleted list in a word processing document. We also talked about a numbered list, or ordered list is what we call it in HTML. And then the last thing that we had in our notes was a definition list, which will put text on one line and index text below it on the next. And so my heading for our notes in this section was web accessibility and HTML lists / tables. So today we're going to add to the notes and talk about tables in a web page. So in a previous computer class, when you used Microsoft Word, you may have used tables to organize some of your text within a document. And we can use HTML tables for the same thing. One of the things that I keep mentioning and repeating is that with HTML, it's not intuitive. So if you want something to go in a particular place on a web page, you have to specifically instruct the browser where to place stuff. And one of the most limiting things about HTML is text itself and where to put it. So sometimes tables in HTML are really the only way to get text where you want them to go on a page. But not just text. So I'm going to say that tables are used for arranging, I'm having a hard time typing here, used for arranging elements on a page. So text, images, links, I'm just going to do a little etc. If I have a web page and I want a picture to show up in the upper right hand corner, but I want text to show up next to it and text below it, the only way that I'm going to get that to possibly work with just HTML is by using a table. Now when we go on to learn CSS, you'll have a lot more freedom over how to place things in a web page, and you don't have to rely on tables quite so much. So I am going to add this, not used as often if using CSS with HTML, because CSS gives us a lot more control over the placement of text. Okay, so if we want to put a table into a web page, here's what we're going to do. It's going to be a long command because we're going to have the table tag. Now that's pretty simple, but the issue is that we do add quite a bit of attributes to this command. Some are optional. I could just put the table tag by itself if I want to. But usually what we do is we add the attribute border equals, and then we put in a number. And we actually don't put the hashtag, so we would substitute with that with a numeric value. Another attribute that we could add is BG color equals, just like we had in the body tag. So if we want to set a background color for our table, we could do that. And then we can add a border color by putting in the attribute border color equals. And then just to remind you that when we do our color codes, the hex codes, put a hashtag in front of that 6-digit code. Okay, so this, let me just kind of scooch this together here. So this, I'm going to shrink it down so it'll show up hopefully all on the same line. There we go. Okay, so we have table, border equals with a number, BG color equals, and then in quotes we're going to put in our hex code, border color equals, and then again in quotes we're going to put in our hex code. So the attributes are definitely optional. And remember what the attributes are, they're just the extra commands. The border attribute, that hashtag, that number, is going to be the number of pixels wide that you want your table to have. If you just ignore this and don't even include the border attribute, you just end up with a table that doesn't have a border to it. Okay, the BG color attribute, Just adds a background to the table. And the border color attribute changes the color of just the table border and nothing else on the page. Okay, so those are the instructions to begin the table, but you're also going to have to use several other types of tags to actually put the content where you want it within your web page. So the next command that we're going to add is a caption tag. This isn't something that you always include with the table, and you'll notice I have the dot, dot, dot in between, which would represent text. This is used to center a title above the table. And it is optional. You don't have to have a caption. But there are definitely situations where you'd like to have one. Okay, another command that we have is what we call the TH tag. TH stands for table heading. And what it does is it will put text either at the top of a column or at the beginning of a row. I'm trying to get this together here. Top of the column or beginning of the row. And there we go. Top of the column, sorry, top of the column or beginning of the row, and it's going to place it in bold. The other thing that's going to do is going to center it. If it goes in front of a row, it'll actually be right justified. I'll show you some examples of that in just a little bit. So those are our headings for columns and rows, but as for the actual content itself, we use a different kind of tag, and that's just called TD, and that stands for table data. I don't know why I keep going down to a new page. And table data, or the TD tag, is used for regular table cell entries. Your plain old text in this case. Okay, here's another thing. I keep talking about HTML and browsers not being able to really be intuitive to know how to display something on a page without explicit instructions. So the other thing that has to come into play in a table is you have to tell the browser when to begin a new row. It's kind of like if you were typing on an old typewriter and you'd have to press the return key to go down to a new line. You have to do that with table commands. So what we use here is a tag that's just TR. Oh boy, Mrs. Rivera cannot type today. TR stands for table row, and it begins a new row in a table. If you don't use a TR tag, you will end up with like one giant big long row in a table that'll scroll off a page and look hideous. Okay, so here's the thing that my students get confused with each year, and so I just want to clarify this. When we're creating a table in HTML, our commands as we do it, they're going to go across a row and then down to a new row, and across a row and down to a new row. We never can build a table going down columns. So I'm just going to add this here. HTML builds a table going across each row and down to a new one. Okay, so let me just show you here how we do this. And I'm just going to work with my file from last week. Okay, this is maybe my file from the week before, but that's fine. Actually, I know why it's not fine, because it was the wrong file. Let me try this again. I can totally tell this is a Monday. Okay, here we go. No. That's my Computers 2 class, isn't it? Oh boy. Okay. Well, let me do this. I'm so sorry to be so indecisive today. Let me try this again. I'm going to use this one and I'm just going to make it work. I'm going to save it under the right extension. So I'm going to quickly build a head. And now I'm going to go down to my, go down to the body. And I'm just going to throw in some colors here. So I'm going to go BG color equals, I'm going to go black. And text color equals, and I'm going to go white. Okay. So let me just throw in a bulleted unordered list like I had last week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Yes, I realize I spelled Tuesday wrong up there. Okay, I'm just going to put Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday in an unordered list. Okay, now what I'm going to do is throw in a p tag, double space, and I'm going to create a table. So first of all, I'm going to do absolutely nothing other than the table tag and then show you what it looks like afterwards. So I'll go TH channel, pretend I'm making a guide for TV shows. Time show. And let me throw in a caption here so you can see what a caption looks like. Okay, so I'm building this across channel, time, show. They're table headings, so they'll be bold. They'll be centered up above the column. And now what I have to tell the browser to do is start a new row. So I'll go TH channel, ABC. Oh, yeah, I do want that to be a... No, I'm just going to go table data here. Here I go being indecisive again. TD, time, 8 o'clock, TD, the middle, TD. I'm going to start a new row. TD, ABC, TD, 9 o'clock. I know what I'm not putting in here is the day of the week, but who cares, right? This is just an example. Modern Family. Okay, I'm going to give you one more row. CBS, 9:30. I never stay awake to actually watch this, so I always record it. A show called Life in Pieces. Okay, so I'm all done. I'm going to put in my closing table tag. Now, let me save this. And I'm going to save it, call it tables.html. Mrs. Rivera's desktop is getting really full again, so now I have to find this. It's over here. It's off the page, so I'm just going to double click on it. And there is my web page, and you can see Mrs. Rivera's favorite shows. That's the caption, and you can see that that text is centered up above the content. You can see that the channel, time, and show, the table headings, they're also centered up above each of the columns, and you can see that they're in bold. And then I have my plain old text. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and add some of those attributes that we put in our notes. So I'm going to go back up to the table tag, and this time I'm going to put in a border, and I'm going to put in a border of 3, so that'll be 3 pixels wide. Border color, let me go yellow. Background color, go blue. And let me reload the page and see if it stuck. There we go. So you can see my border, 3 pixels. You can see my background color, blue. But one of the things that I don't care for in this table is the fact that it's all smooshed together. So that's where we need to add to our notes. Okay, so one of the things that we can do is we can add some extra cushion around content in a cell. And that is what we call cell padding. So let me do this. Let me move this down to a new page. There. So we call that cell padding. So what we're going to do, it's just another attribute. Equals, and we'll put in a number. So we're just going to add to the table tag. Cell padding equals and a number. That number is going to represent the thickness in pixels of space around tables, content in a table cell. So what I'm going to do right now is go right back to that sample, and I'm just going to add cell padding equals, and I'm going to add 10. It'll give me a cushion of 10 pixels around the text in a cell. So now I want you to focus on the smushed up table, and when I reload it, you can see that extra 10 pixels around it. Okay, there is another one that you can do, and that is you can add extra space between cells in a table. And the way that we do that is we add another attribute to the table tag, and then what we add is just called cell spacing equals. And then we put in a number, and again, that's going to represent the thickness in pixels. So I will do that. I'm going to go back to my really big table tag now, and I'm going to add cell spacing equals, and I'm also going to set that to 10. So if I go back to my web page and I reload it, focus on that little distance between the cells, and when I reload it, now I've just increased that gap. You can actually play around with cell spacing and cell padding and have no border, and sometimes that'll work really well when you're trying to separate pictures from text on a page or text from other text on a page. So for example, I'm going to get rid of the border color. I'm actually going to get rid of the border. Okay, so let me save that. I'm going to go back. And so what you're going to see, you'll still see that same space in between, but you're not going to see the borders because I've eliminated it. And that's a really great way to try to get things to show up on a page the way you would like them to. And then the last thing, and it's just kind of a no-brainer, and I've already used this, but don't forget the closing table tag. So we're going to put closing table tag at the end, which I already did in my example. But if you forget it, it could really end up messing up the page. Okay, so that will be the end of the notes. And just like all the other ones that I've had you do, I'm going to have you submit these to me on Google Classroom and move on. If you have any questions, please let me know.